Practice here. Let's call the meeting to order, please. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Phil Goldstein,
Here.
Vice Chairperson Marty Jost, Commissioner Scott Royce,
Here.
Commissioner Don Risden,
Here.
Commissioner Lisa Bard, Alternate Eric Westland.
Thank you. Commissioners, any staff, any amendments to the agenda? I will offer one. You might notice it says Commissioner Lisa Bard. It doesn't say alternate Lisa Bard. Our colleague was at Council's Infinite Wisdom was elevated from alternate to a commissioner seat last week. So congratulations, Lisa, well deserved.
Chairperson, I have one comment. When you're speaking tonight, make sure you turn your microphone on and get close to it so that because we're recording so it's going to be, the only way it's going to pick up your voice is if you're actually speaking in the microphone. So appreciate that.
Thanks. Any other amendments to the agenda? Hearing none. Everybody's accounted for here, so there's no alternate voting. Right, 1, 2, 3, yes. Public comment. This is general public comment. This is an opportunity for anybody who wishes to speak on something that is not on the agenda. So is there anybody signed up, whomever has the list, signed up to speak on anything not on the agenda?
No, sir.
Thank you. We close the general public comment. Staff, I believe there is opportunity for public comment on all these agenda items, so there'll be an opportunity later on. Thanks. Consent agenda consists only of the approval of the June 2nd, 2020 meeting minutes. Commissioners, any additions or corrections to the minutes? Nothing. Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's 5-1. Approval of the consent agenda. Thank you. First business item, item 6A, Resolution 1, Series 2020, a resolution for annexation property known as McBride to the town of Timnath, located east of County Road 3F and north of Stonefly Drive. And that's Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. And I will actually do both 6A and 6B together because they go hand in hand. And I don't know why those aren't showing up.
Do we have public comment separately, or do you want to combine both of them? Let us know whatever nuances there are of each, and then have public comment. Would that be sufficient to have public comment on both of them combined?
We could probably do combined, Robert, with that. Yeah, we can do combined.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm going to combine 6A and 6B because they go hand in hand. This is for annexation and zoning of property known as the old McBride property, located east of County Road 3F and north of Stonefly, and just west of the existing Timnath Trail apartments, just across the street from here, highlighted there in the blue on your map. This property is roughly 4.8 acres, which is currently in Larimer County. And we have received a petition from the previous owners, Bev and Mike McBride, for annexation into the town. The property owner is also requesting this be zoned R4. This is a representation of what that zoning would look like with the surrounding zonings. The intent from the property owner is to propose a second phase of the Timnath Trail apartments. That will be coming forth as a site plan to you at a future date. This action here is just annexation and zoning, bringing it from Larimer County into the town. The annexation complies with all Colorado revised statutes and town code for annexation. The current property owner is Timnath Trail 2 LLC, represented tonight by Bill Albright and Isaac Lewis. With that, I will turn it over to Bill if you want to just mention a couple things.
Sure. Thank you. Bill Albright. Address is in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. So we're excited to extend the property, we're having some good success with the Timnath Trail Phase 1 portion. So we're looking at extending that over to the McBride property. It would be a seamless, fluent addition to what we have right now by adding some more parking, some more amenity space, another fitness center, besides 82 units. So as you look at it there, we'll be bringing the site plan further coming up in the coming month or so. But I think that it'll be I know that it'll be a good combination and a good addition to what we currently have. It's been well received within the community. It looks well, it plays out well, and we've got some very good comments. So I think it'll be a good addition. If you have any further comments, you can feel free to ask.
Staff, anything you want to add to that before I turn it over to the commissioners? And Kevin, again, Robert, Kevin,
one
have we
thing
covered everything that needs to be covered in both of these business items?
Yeah, and just to note, what went to town council a little over a month ago was just the substantial compliance hearing for council to give the head nod that it meets requirements to then go through the process for annexation. So there was no action formally taken on it other than the head nod saying, go ahead and proceed with the actual annexation timeline and process.
Yeah, it certainly was going to be a question that I anticipated. All right, I'm going to turn it over. Let's have public comments first. Would that be appropriate at this time? And we maybe do so on both. I don't think the public can separate these two. Robert, that's all right to do?
It is, and I'll confess, it's been a little while since I've been to one of these meetings, but there's pretty broad flexibility and discretion here on the part of the Planning Commission.
Commissioners, would you like to hear public comment first, see if there is any, and hear that? I think that would be appropriate.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there anybody signed up to offer public comment on this?
Yes, we do have one, sir.
Okay, let's
That would be
go ahead with that, please.
D. Miller. Okay.
Okay, then we will close the public comment and I'll turn it over to the commissioners. Commissioners, questions, comments for Bill or the staff on this?
So been a while since we've had an annexation, so there's some technical questions I wanted to ask because it's kind of an educational thing. Some of us haven't been through that. So.
Yep.
So first is there's some blanks in there. I'm assuming those will get filled in as
On the annexation map?
Yeah.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay. And then vesting right options, can you explain those?
In regards to the annexation agreement?
Yeah,
or,
just what are the vesting options? What do those mean?
Robert, do you want to take that one?
Kevin, I hadn't actually looked at this one before this. I wasn't planning on attending the meeting until this afternoon, so I can take a quick look and get back to this, but I had not reviewed your packet materials for this item.
And Robert, it isn't just what's specific for these, it's just kind of as an educational opportunity for some that haven't sat through one of these, what is a vesting?
Sure. I can absolutely speak to that. So vesting rights is a concept that has been recognized in Colorado under common law for many years, and then was more recently also incorporated into the Colorado revised statutes. And the idea of vesting rights provisions is that the developer, before making the investment in the property that they need to make when they come to the Planning Commission and then the council, is looking for some certainty that they're not going to invest substantial resources into developing a plan only to get the project approved, only to have the council turn around and impose a moratorium on development or some other regulation that would make the future development of the property infeasible. So the vesting right concept is one that is somewhat frequently incorporated into annexation agreements if the type of development is one that the town is comfortable conferring vesting for.
Okay, thanks. So other question is, reading through this, are there any non-standard terms in this, or they're all, because they looked all fairly standard, but
Yeah, that draft annexation agreement is a fairly standard agreement in terms that we have. That's actually our draft one, and I think, Bill, you can chime in on that, but they had no concerns with those standard terms that we had on the annexation agreement.
okay.
Commissioners, other questions, comments? Okay, hearing none.
Oh, I
Commissioners.
have a couple
oh,
of questions.
Yeah.
And this is not towards the annexation, but it's on the zoning on that. So how many units are currently in the apartments that are already there?
176.
And so we're adding an additional 82? This is the
Correct.
proposed. I mean, no, I know we're not to that point yet.
Yep. Correct.
And it's comparable as far as acreage, percentage, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it is. It's actually going to be less dense than what the first phase is, comparable from that standpoint.
And I
correct, yeah.
assume the current residence going to be taken down?
Yes, it will be.
Okay. Those are my only questions.
Eric, Dawn, Scott, anything? Okay, do I have a motion with that? We'll be voting on resolution number 16A first. Resolution 1, Series 2020. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 6B, the zoning map, the amendment for the annexation. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. I may have misspoke and staff may have walked down the road with me. Vice Chair Jost pointed out that the next item is a site plan. Therefore, am I correct? There is no, before I break the heart of our friend and famous author Del Miller back there, am I correct? There is no public comment because it's a site plan.
That is actually correct,
Okay.
Chairperson.
And we can't waive that, or can?
It can be waived, but if you've, it's
I
in
don't
the
mean to put you
discretion
in
of
a
the planning
difficult
commission.
position. It is?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, that it's prudent to do that, that it's proper to do that because she would have had that opportunity. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's hear from staff first. Kevin, this is, yeah. Kevin, this is you as well. Why don't you make the presentation and then
Correct.
I agree with Marty and I appreciate the discretion staff. Then we'll allow that public comment on that.
As I'm pulling up the information here. All right. Oh, wrong one. I pulled up their presentation. Got a lot of technology going on. There we go. All right, thank you, Chairperson. So this is a site plan application for an approximate 12-acre park site on the Timnath Landing subdivision that will include an augmentation pond. This is located on Tract B of the Timnath Landing first filing, outlined here in blue. It's basically at the northeast corner of Kern and Fifth Avenue in Old Town. The primary purpose, and it's zoned RMU, The primary purpose of this property is for an open space park and an augmentation pond. The primary purpose of an augmentation pond is to serve to balance evaporative losses that will be created by future lakes that will be constructed with future phases of the Timnath Landing subdivision. The pond itself is roughly 8 acres in surface, and then roughly about a 3-acre park on the east-hand side that will front the future Timnath Parkway. The park will have turf areas, seating areas, sidewalk connections, and a trail that will go around, a soft surface trail that will go around the pond. And then there will be trail connectivity to the rest of the subdivision. There was a virtual neighborhood meeting that was held on this property back on August 20th with the residents of the Old Town area. And the purpose of the meeting was to review the site plan and gain any feedback or concerns from the Old Town residents. Approximately 13 residents attended, and their comments are part of the observation report. And there was also a recording that's made available on the town's website. The town staff has reviewed this against the site plan review criteria. And this is generally not one of our normal site plans, so not a lot of the review criteria actually applies, but it complies with the general site plan review criteria of the land use code. There is one building associated with this, which is going to be a pump house, and the architecture of that is in your packet. It'll have some stone, some wood, general features that will make it look like it could be a shed of a residential house to keep with some of that character. It has good connectivity with trail connections, and then there is no general utilities that are needed for this site, as a typical commercial building would have. So with that, I will turn it over to John Prestwich, who will provide a brief presentation.
Hi, good evening. John Prestwich with PCS Group, 200 Calumet Street, Denver, Colorado, 80223. Is this mic on?
Yep, it's on.
Yes. All right. I did good. All right. So, I'm actually here for the ownership group. We're the landscape architecture firm on this project, and we've got quite a project team. As I mentioned, we're the planner and landscape architect on the project. The folks that are on the screen are actually also on a Zoom call. If there are any questions of a technical nature, they'll really be the ones to best be able to answer those questions. The project is being developed by Catellus. You've probably seen us here a few different times. Catellus is a national real estate company with over 35 years of experience developing high-quality master planned communities really throughout the United States. They've been operating in Colorado for over 20 years now. They purchased this property back in 2015, and they are a consensus-based organization. Michael, with Catellus, has actually on the notifications for this project put his personal cell phone number and has had conversations with many of the neighbors over the past, probably month or longer since notifications have gone out on this project. So just a little bit of history on the property. In 2015, the sketch plan, comp plan amendment, and zoning, as well as the PD overlay and preliminary plat were approved for the property. And then in 17, the first final plat was approved. And that's actually some of the construction that you see along Main Street with David Weekley's single family homes going in. One of the big ideas for the property was the creation of almost 40 acres worth of lakes. And in 2018, the water court decree was approved that would allow the construction of those lakes. One of the elements is this augmentation pond. It's really the first thing that needs to be built so that the balance of the lakes running through the center of the property can be built. Earlier in 2019, phase one of the construction began, and we started doing really the planning for the augmentation pond as well as the park area. And then, of course, we've had the neighborhood meeting that Kevin mentioned, and then, of course, we're here tonight. Currently, the property is zoned residential mixed use. That's the zoning designation, and those uses permitted would include apartments, condos, townhomes, offices, things of that nature. And in fact, earlier on, we had done some layouts with some apartment layouts for the property and some other mixed use layouts for the property. And in gathering some community feedback, you'll actually notice, can I use this red? Is that a pointer?
It won't show on the TV.
It won't show on the TV. Well, there's sort of the lakes that run through the center of the property, and then there's one that's kind of up on the north side. That lake was originally intended sort of as the augmentation pond. Well, as we started getting feedback from the community, we looked at the opportunity of taking that lake and essentially moving it over to the residential mixed use area. Kind of a win-win for the comments that we were receiving. So now you'll see on the site plan for phase one, I wish I could point, but anyways, the augmentation pond is the brightest element on this slide. That is what is currently zoned as residential mixed use. That will then feed into the ponds running through the balance of the Timnath Lakes property. This is really just more of a phasing explanation of how we're envisioning moving through the whole Timnath Lakes community. In the bottom left, sort of brightish red is really phase one. A lot of that is under construction currently. Just to the north and east is what we're considering phase two, which includes the augmentation pond. Phase three is then the sort of cyan blue, and then up to the north is the last ultimate phase of the overall Timnath Lakes. So, Kevin kind of ran through a lot of this, so I won't take too much time on it. But again, it's overall, it's about 11.5 acres, the site, about 8 acres of pond surface and about 3 acres of parks and trail. The water enters the property through the lake canal ditch, and then it's fed back to the Poudre. The pond will be lined, so no leakage, nothing going outside of the area. And the construction process is likely about a 9 to 12 month process, candidly very similar to what it would be for if it was a residential or commercial type project as well. A little bit just closer in detail of it, you can kind of start to see the pond itself, and then it has the about a half-mile gravel trail around the exterior of the pond. We work with the town to get as much sort of meander in the pond edge and trail edge as we can, as well as some berming native plantings. And then kind of a nice element along the parkway is actually the creation of that park. Really walkable for the residents of Old Town. Eventually, Kern Street will extend to the north, so we'll have good access along there as well. So we like to, when we're designing things, we try to look at it in 3 dimensions and what's it ultimately going to look like. So we created some renderings. This is in the south corner looking towards the east. Now you're getting closer. We're actually off the pond, obviously. You're looking towards Timnath Parkway. You can start to get a sense of the looped trails, native landscape, combined with some manicured landscape coming out to the sort of park area. Again, this view is just a little bit further in, so you start to see a little bit of the lake edge treatment out to the park area going towards Timnath Parkway. And then let's hope this plays. Nope. Okay. We have a video that I think really tells the story. Can you click play on yours?
I had to put it into a PDF, John.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the video really it shows, the same things as these still images. It just a little bit more detail. So frankly, that kind of concludes my presentation. Again, we do have the folks on the Zoom call if there are technical questions, and we're happy to answer any questions.
But you have them hang on, John. Let's allow Mrs. Miller to offer a comment and then see if that elicits any questions from commissioners that we might need your partners for.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Dell?
My name is Dell Miller. I live at 4000 Kearns Street. I've lived there for 51 years, and I am directly south of the Augmentation Pond. My concern this evening, I was on that call, by the way, but due to technical difficulties, I was not able to speak. On page 40 of your packet, it states that there is only 2 years within which time, if there is any problem with the wells, that we have to only 2 years to notify the people. I'm wondering how hard and fast that is. What happens if it's 2 years and 6 months? So I would like to have that addressed by the developers of the pond. My second concern is that being so close to the trail, I spoke with Mr. Kuykendall, and he said that there would be more landscaping put in so that the people walking on the trail could not critique what I was having for dinner. So I would like to make sure that that is taken care of before we pass on that. So my main concern is the 2-year time limit of notifying people if we have a problems with our well after they dewater.
Thanks, Dale. I am out of practice here with this microphone.
Planning Commission, I'm not sure if folks can hear me. This is Michael Kirkendall with Catellus Development Corporation,
Go
the
ahead, Michael.
developer owner of the property.
Hang on one second, Michael. So we're a little out of sync here. Normally, John, you've done the routine before, so we do ask, and I know I saw you nodding your head back there with a question about the trail. So again, before we turn it over to commissioners, and we may want to circle back to you and Michael, but we'll give Michael an opportunity. Why don't you address these two? And Don Toronto, is there any thoughts you have about this issue about the wells and staff? If there's any precedent for this? I don't recall anything in my tenure, but so let's kind of bring all this together before we turn it over to the commissioners.
Sure, I'd love to take the easy one.
Go ahead, take the easy one.
So we prepared the landscape plans, and so we've actually tried to make sure, using aerial photography, to add more vertical trees along the edge closest to your house. And we'll continue to work with you on site if you want to stake where those go. That was the easier one for me to address than the 2-year well notification. I don't know if Michael, if you can address that one, or.
I sure can. Can you guys hear me there?
Yep, loud and clear. Okay.
First of all, thank you, Planning Commission and Ms. Miller for your comment. My name is Michael Kirkendall. I represent CAC Timnath, the owner of the property and developer, Catellus Development Corporation. And through this entire process, we've worked with staff very, very closely, and our team of engineers and attorneys who are all on the phone here as well, or on Zoom, to really determine kind of, what is the nature of the dewatering that we will be performing, as well as the impacts. Staff in Catellus and our engineers really came to the 2-year period, mainly because we believe that any dewatering that happens on the site is going to be known far in advance of that 2-year period. And so we had kind of stretched that out as an outside date in order to allow for some more time. Really, the impacts from dewatering would be known, as soon as we start construction. Essentially, we're going through a process to document the wells previous to the start of construction, again, in collaboration with town staff and our engineer and legal team, to set a baseline really to then measure against. And so we believe that the 2-year period allows for plenty of time for that kind of communication and process. And so that's why that was included in the document that you see before you tonight. On the plan question as to the added plantings and the screening, as I had mentioned in conversations directly with Ms. Miller, we added some additional plantings and foliage to make sure that there was some screening, and not just for her properties, but for others as well. We want to be mindful of the fact that we believe this is a great place for our residents and the town of Timnath residents to come and enjoy, but we want to be respectful of the neighbors that are existing today. And so we have added that into the plan, and we'll ensure that. One other thing in the interim, as kind of construction, there will also be a fence around the property to ensure that, previous to some of the images that John showed here tonight with full-grown plantings and what have you, that during the construction of this pond in the park, there will be fencing up to make sure that those residents adjacent to the property have privacy and screening through that period as well. So it's something that we're very mindful of, and we take seriously through this process. So thank you. And I'm happy to answer any other questions from Planning Commission or staff. We appreciate your time tonight.
I'm going to close the public comment, but I think let's start off. Dawn, I think you have something to offer on this, and Robert as well. If you have something, we'd appreciate that.
Sure. And Michael, you're right. We've worked closely with you and your folks for a long time on this. And so to talk specifically about the 2-year period, I mean, the augmentation pond that's in front of everybody today and the dewatering for the lakes and all are actually two different things. Okay, but they both could affect the wells. But the 2-year period we're talking about is a 2-year period from the time the lake system, the lake dewatering system, is completed. And so that's there will be a longer period than 2 years associated with both the construction of the augmentation pond and the dewatering and construction of the lakes. So I won't venture an actual guess of how long that is, but I'll suggest that the period is going to be noticeably longer than 2 years for the effect to be noticed. Do you agree with that, Michael?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Town Attorney Rogers, you had something to offer.
The other thing that I would just put out there for the Planning Commission to consider is that Chair Goldstein, you're correct. This is the first project of this type that's come before the town, and the town design review criteria, and there's some other places in the town code where there is support for the town requiring the developer to put in monitoring wells and work through a mitigation program, but there's not a template for that process and how that process works. So the details of that process have been under negotiation with the developer for quite some time. And we thought that there was a good back and forth and give and take, and that this final product represents a good balanced process that protects the rights of the residents adequately, but doesn't burden the developer to the point that it makes this project infeasible. So in our view, it's a document that represents a pretty good give and take balance, and that's why staff is supportive of the item that's in front of you this evening.
Staff, anything else to add before I turn it over to the commissioners here? Okay, commissioners, questions and comments for John, Michael, or staff?
I've got one. John, on the augmentation pond's lined with a liner of some kind, and I would expect, being augmentation, that it would be empty at some point, that water would leave, or is that not the case? Is it just there for evaporative extra, or explain that to us, please?
It is, yeah. So the fluctuation of the water surface level is anticipated to be about a foot or so. It's being fed and then it's feeding. So the real purpose is just to have water for the water that's being evaporated on the surface that's exposed.
And one other thing I would add, if you guys can hear me again, is that the fluctuations will be gradual. So there will be a period where, to answer your question, the liner is a slurry wall that goes around the perimeter of the pond. There will be a fill period where we'll be bringing water in to fill up that pond, and then we'll be releasing that water out of the augmentation pond back into the Poudre River system, and there will be gradual fluctuations. It's impossible to know exactly what period, because it's based on rainfall and things like that. But to go through the water court case, as well as working with town staff, we went through extensive analysis in order to determine that. And like John had mentioned, it's a matter of a few feet from time to time, and it's very gradual in terms of that either rising or lowering.
Thank you, guys. I just want to make sure that if that water level fluctuated, the pond is still attractive, that you're not looking at a plastic or EPDM line pond that's empty. So that's good news. That answers my question.
Yeah, and that was, sorry, one other thing just on that. We spent a significant amount of time really looking at riprap and natural grasses and kind of undulation of the topography to ensure that as, you know, water levels were fluctuating, you still had a very nice kind of aesthetic appearance around the perimeter. And you will not see any sort of liner or what have you, because it's internal to the system itself underground.
So it's not bentonite, it's actual plastic liner holding water in?
No, it's a slurry wall. Basically, what they do is they put a wall that's impenetrable from the surface, or at least the surface of where the water is going to be, all the way down to bedrock, and then key it into that, so that you've created like a bathtub around the entire pond. Yeah, that's exactly right. They did.
Yeah. What? I thought they were mixing soil with bentonite and spreading it and moving it.
No, that's a slurry wall. Now the slurry wall is a combination of a lot of that.
Yeah.
But it's in one wall that goes down, not on the edges or the bottom of the reservoir.
Well, dewatering is something that you just don't say in Colorado a whole lot. It's not something that we're familiar to hearing, you know, it's just, but you know, how vast does that go? I mean, I know there's subdivisions that have wells in this same area that are close. I mean, maybe 600-700 feet from there that have wells that are associated with associations. I'm not talking about like watering your plants in your yard.
Right.
These are like subdivisional wells.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And we can certainly have experts, but those wells are much deeper than we're going.
Yeah.
But Michael, I don't know. I mean, that's the simple answer. There's a far more technical one.
Yeah, so to answer the question, I mean, we studied, again, with staff. There was quite a bit of back and forth in terms of studying the wells in the immediate vicinity. The findings of what we studied was that some of the shallow, what they call kind of hand dug wells that might be 3, 4, 5 feet down, may experience some interruption with the dewatering, and we've worked through a process in the mitigation program that Robert had mentioned previously to ensure that those folks will have access to the water. And I guess the long and short of it is there will be a registration process after the hopeful approval of the site plan here tonight. The folks that are within that vicinity of Old Town and kind of the impacted area will be able to come forward, register their well. We'll have a licensed Colorado engineer go out, take some measurements from the well, as well as have a conversation about its current use. And if some of those hand dug kind of shallow wells do experience water level issues with the dewatering of this augmentation pond, we will re-drill a well to full depth. And that's included in the packet of what is presented tonight. And so we're very aware, I was going to say well aware, we're very aware of the wells in the vicinity and have done extensive analysis to look at the fluctuations of the water and make sure that folks will have continued use as they're using it today.
Michael, can I interrupt for a second? So I think Commissioner Royce is actually speaking to maybe Fairview Village well, for example, which is on the north west quadrant of this project.
Yeah, 40 and 5.
Yeah, so I think you or one of your experts could talk to kind of the groundwater, how it moves based on what you're doing. So I think there's like the upstream side of this, so to speak, versus the downstream side of it. And I think that'll maybe clear up the question that you may have.
Yeah, well, what I was saying too is, I mean, there's a lot of flood irrigation that's west. You know, it's west of County Road 5. It's flood irrigation. It's sand dike ditch, and so the water is being poured in there. So the fluctuation between water levels is immense, but there's tons of water, and there's tons of water on your guys' site too. It's a little disattached from where the building is now to where that pond is, but I can see the water glistening on that field out there. I mean, the water level is high. And I mean, it even backfills in the Fairview Village when they flood irrigate that other side off the sand dike ditch. It'll fill the retention ponds in Fairview Village with water. So I know there's a lot of water over there. I just didn't know what the extent of, what direction. I know this property's direction is mainly east.
Yeah.
It's not, west. And so that was the only thing I was saying. I know that Fairview Village as well is 175 plus feet deep, and it pumps water no matter what, but just
Right.
was curious. So.
Yeah, and Bruce Lytle, if you're on and available, I know you're on, but if you're available to.
Yeah, I'll be glad to jump in here, Michael. So obviously any flood irrigation from a ditch isn't going to be affected by either the augmentation pond or any dewatering operations, because that's water coming directly out of the pooter. And so that's actually, when they flood irrigate, it's actually putting water back into the ground that would mitigate potential dewatering, because you're putting groundwater return flows back in from a surface water ditch. I'm not familiar with the actual flood irrigation that you're talking about. I know that there's some flood irrigation up to the northwest. And is that the property that you're talking about?
Yeah, all of, it'd be north of 40C, west of County Road 5. All those properties in that area are all flood irrigated, but that ditch continues all the way behind, like where Timnath Elementary is, all those properties back there. Can't think of the names of the properties, but all those over on that side, that they're all flood irrigated. And I know that it's flood irrigated, it's added to the groundwater, but as far as trying to take the water that was added to the groundwater and move it someplace else, I just didn't, I just wasn't sure like how much that was dug into. I understand the people in Old Town that, are east of County Road 5, that this could affect their wells, but, groundwater, it seeps vast areas. And so, a lot of the only irrigation ditch is on the other side of County Road 5, and it runs, all the way through. And, I was just wondering how wide this, perspective was on what was going to go on with this dewatering. I get the people in the immediate area, but, there's a lot more in that area that counts on that groundwater. So.
Right. And I think one of the key components of kind of what's before you guys tonight, before the Planning Commission tonight, is the augmentation pond, which the dewatering related to the augmentation pond it's a one-time construction related event. And so we have to go ahead and put in the slurry wall around that pond and then dewater the contents of the area, which essentially we've enclosed, in order to excavate the dirt and material out. And so I think, even in our neighborhood meeting, we had a question about kind of irrigation return flows and the surcharge of the groundwater table. And I mean, Bruce, you can speak to this more specifically, but I think, those types of events are going to continue after this. The dewatering that was really contemplated with the homes that are immediately adjacent to this was really in terms of kind of the construction related dewatering to this pond, which again, may be just a matter of a few months or so.
Yeah, and the one thing I do want to point out is the groundwater table right now is 10 or 15 feet below the ground surface. So any ditches running through this area are going to be totally unaffected. They're hydraulically disconnected. So any ditches that irrigate to the north or even run down further to the south are not going to be affected at all by any dewatering, because the local groundwater in these ditch systems are hydraulically disconnected. In other words, there's a distance between the bottom of the ditch and the groundwater table. And so when the groundwater table changes, if it does change, it has no effect on that very shallow surface water that's flowing in that ditch. And Michael, you're right on the dewatering. It's a one-time event. Once the construction dewatering is done for the augmentation pond and the slurry wall is in, then obviously there won't be any other dewatering associated with that.
Don, I thought that a few minutes ago you wanted to jump in there with something.
Yeah, I did, but I think it's all been answered. I'm good.
Okay. Scott, you still got the floor if you want to continue questions.
No, I think we're all on the same page. I just, I live close to there, and I've done a number of soil samples and been in through the building of a subdivision and watched, water tables, jump and decrease. And, there's shale in that area. There's a lot of complicated. I mean, I don't know. I didn't see any soil samples or anything in there like that. And I know the water board ultimately is going to give the yay or the nay on this. So I just, like I said, water, when you say dewatering in Colorado, it just always gives me questions, leaves me with questions, but.
Fair.
So.
Understood.
Commissioners, is that anything else? Commissioners, other questions? Our water expert down there at the end, good questions.
So few questions. Is the registration of the wells transferable if somebody sells their property, or are they kind of locked in during this?
Yeah, all the wells that we're talking about associated with this that Michael and his group and us as staff have looked at are all adjudicated wells with the state, and they're fully transferable with the property. So these are.
But this registration period where if something negative happens, if somebody new buys the property, does that transfer and they still have the same rights to get it repaired?
We are assuming that for sure. That all the wells that are adjudicated, they're tied to property now.
Yeah.
Let's just, I want to make sure I understand the question. So property owner A registers a well.
Yep. Within
a year, they sell the property to somebody else. Is that property still covered under this guarantee?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Michael, you agree with me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So in reading that well protection document, it seems like a lot of the conditions are based on flow. What about water quality? So are they testing water quality to make sure there's no negative impacts?
They are not that I know of, but I don't know how this dewatering operation would affect water quality. It's just the level of the water.
Yeah, I just didn't know that, I've seen in some cases, or read about that sometimes if you disturb something, the water can become brackish or, something changes, then can affect the water quality.
Honestly, we have not looked at that. I don't believe that's an issue. Michael, maybe your water engineer can talk a little bit about that, but I do not believe water quality is going to be an issue with this situation.
Yeah, this is Bruce Lytle again. I would certainly agree. What we're looking at is a passive dewatering system that will make gradual changes in the groundwater. And so we do not expect at all for there to be any water quality changes. In fact, I would certainly expect that probably water table levels under Old Town have experienced these kinds of changes before, because being a shallow system like this, water levels go up and down when you have wet years, dry years. And so, and this is all alluvial material, it's all fresh water. Because essentially this system is supported by water out of the Poudre River. So we would not expect there to be any changes in water quality just due to a passive dewatering system that gradually changes the groundwater table.
Yeah, another thing, I mean, we have some experience, meaning staff here with brackish water, but it's generally significantly deeper than anything we're talking about here.
Okay, it's just, I'm hearing shouldn't and don't expect, and just something to consider that water quality tests don't cost that much. So would that be, I think it's something to consider anyway in this.
I don't think there'd be any issue with that, Michael. We can talk about that. Some of the water quality that we're probably talking about is pretty simple, and is probably suspended solids types of situation, and we can surely talk about that.
Okay. And then in reading through that, the pond, how deep is that? I mean, if I read the elevations correctly, it's like 4820 to 4860, so it's about 40 foot.
I think it's closer to 30 something, but it's in that ballpark.
So that goes, you were saying before, it keys into the bedrock. How are you going to dig that into there? I mean, you just chip away or blasting it, or how do you get that?
So I can take that question. Michael Kirknall again. So we'll be using conventional means and methods. So the first 20 to 25 feet of the material is overburden. It's just soils and loose rocks and what have you, which will be excavated most likely with scrapers and excavators. As we get into the deeper material, the denser material about 25 feet down, there will be a number of different methods employed, which are all kind of currently available to our use under the current land use code. So it will be likely a combination of scrapers, like I mentioned, some tiger teeth, what they call on the end of a excavation bucket, as well as pneumatic hammering.
Okay, all right, that's all I had.
I'm going to put a sticky note here to remind me to turn the darn thing on. Marty, are you interested in, regarding this water quality, are you interested in proposing that be a condition in some fashion as we look to bring this to a head here?
I mean, do we need it as a condition, or is there agreement to take that on? Because I mean, I'm in the water quality business, and it's just people drink the water, and it just seems like a good safeguard.
Well, they're probably not going to drink this water, but on the same hand, and Michael, I'll just pose the question to you and your team. I think it'd be pretty easy to do some random sampling of water quality at the beginning, during, and end, and just to convince everybody that there's no change.
I think doing some testing around the property on water quality should be fine. I want to chat with Bruce and my team a little bit offline, but I think it's something that we can work with staff on for sure, to just make sure. I want to make sure there's an ability to do it and monitor it in a way that is shareable and what have you. So for sure.
Do you want to propose that be a condition? This is a site plan. Lisa?
Seems to me your concern is for the well owners and the quality of their water, if it's changed.
Yeah.
Not the water, the quality of the augmentation pond, but the quality of the water for the well owners.
Yes, yeah, it's not just a flow thing, it's the water quality of the well owners.
I think one of the other characteristics, and Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong, but these are irrigation wells, correct? And not for drinking to begin with. Is that through the adjudication process? Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, these wells, my understanding, are all for irrigation. Couple things that I'd throw out there is because they are in residential areas and residents have the ability to put fertilizer and herbicides and pesticides and things like that out on their lawns. I have a little bit of a concern about how we come up with what we would consider representative water quality and which well or wells would be sampled and so on. So, but it does need to be kept in mind that these are irrigation wells. And so it's not like we're looking at potable water supply standards.
So I'm back. I will echo Marty's comment, paraphrasing should, would, but I guess I need to first put my colleague on the spot. Do you want to make that a condition if when we get around to asking for a motion? If so, you could couch your motion in those terms. But Bruce I believe Bruce, that was you, not Michael, brought up that point. How feasible is it, Don, Robert, perhaps if we make that a condition?
Okay, if we were to make it a condition, I agree with Bruce that the residential components are, they are potentially suspect to contamination from the surface from the property owners. We could get on the perimeter of the town and we can agree on a water quality sample and understand that if there was going to be some type of water quality effect, it would happen to everything. It wouldn't be, so we can get on a perimeter of town on their property that is not subject to any of this and take a sample early on and then later.
I guess I misunderstood that in the document. If these are just irrigation wells, I wouldn't put a motion on there.
Okay, and I agree with that. I don't think that water quality for irrigation systems is, at least how these are being used, is really a factor here.
Okay, good. Glad we cleared that up. Commissioners, any other questions, comments?
I do have a quick
Don.
question. So there was mention if there is an issue of re-drilling the well, but I guess my question really kind of centers around, can we review, what other things will happen? Because, drilling a well is not going to happen overnight. And if they need the water for irrigation and that kind of thing, is there any other kind of mitigation that's going to happen to, help those residents during that period?
Who wants that one?
Yeah, so I can answer that. I think it was a little hard to hear. I think the question is, are there other, drilling a well may take some time. Are there other mitigations that could be used? The document it's currently, well, first of all, was that the question, making sure I heard that right?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. The document basically allows for drilling of the well to be the primary means in order to restore service to those wells. That being said, there is also a condition in the document that says, other means and methods agreeable to the parties. So, for instance, if there was an issue and, there was call it a snag with a well driller, having somebody, hand irrigate it at our expense, meaning the developer's expense in the interim until that well was deepened. Something like that would be agreeable and allowable under the document as it's drafted.
And Commissioner Risden, to add one point, and just to emphasize, it's a mutually agreeable requirement in the town. If there's going to be an alternative method that's used, the town would require some kind of written confirmation from both the well owner and Catellus that they've got an alternative arrangement in place.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioners, other comments, questions? Matt, did you have something else? Okay. All right, with that, do I have a motion to approve business item 6C, Timnath Landing Augmentation Pond Site Plan?
So moved.
I was second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Move on to item
One second there,
Oh.
Chairperson. Want to interject one thing that came to the attention of Robert and I during that last time. There was inadvertently on the annexation, the wrong draft agreement, annexation agreement put in the packet. And that property does not have vested rights, as you would mention there, Marty. So there was a step on that one to where the wrong draft annexation agreement was inserted. That property does not have vested property rights, and that was what the property owner had reviewed on. And Robert, if you want to chime in a little bit more on that.
The only thing that I would add is that draft is included it really for illustrative purposes to give the Planning Commission an idea of what the final form annexation agreement that goes to the council is going to look like. What happened there is that there is an option, there's optional language that's included in the template, and for the right project, usually a bigger master plan community, you would include that concept. And that was why I was a little flat-footed when you asked the question of me. So my apologies there. As a point of order, if that were a problem for the planning commission, you could revisit the item and reopen it. I'm not anticipating that this would change your view of the larger item that you've already acted on, but I just want to be clear that procedural option is there for the planning commission should you choose to pursue it.
Do you choose to pursue it? No?
Thank you.
All right, with that, we move on. We do move on to item 60, Saratoga Falls amended sketch plan. Kevin.
Thank you, Chairperson. There we go. So as you mentioned, this is a sketch plan amendment proposal for the Saratoga Falls subdivision. Before I kind of go a little bit further, I'm going to actually kind of jump down a little bit. The reason why this is coming back to you within a year is that on August 11th, the town council approved a resolution waiving the 1-year waiting period of a denied application per section 2956 of the land use code. So since council had approved that waiver, that is why you are hearing this within a year from that denial. So to go back up to the summary, the previous approved sketch plan in 2014 for Saratoga Falls had roughly 500, or did have 500 lots for the second and third filing, with each respective filing getting 250 lots. The council approved the prior sketch plan after working with the developer to reach a compromise on the density back in 2014. The amended proposal that's in front of you keeps the same number of lots, 250, but it now includes a future potential use of a Poudre School District 16-acre elementary school site. The sketch plan is still consistent with the R2 zoning. And it meets the parks and open space requirement. On the sketch plan itself, it is depicting only the predetermined open space and park areas at this time. So their clubhouse and park, their pocket parks, a wetland area, and some other general open space that are kind of predetermined, and that meets roughly 23% of the space. As we get in further into platting, as you can kind of tell on those tan or yellow, depending on what color you're looking at, those areas will have open space with them as we get into platting, which will then increase that percentage of open space for the entire subdivision. But currently, just from parks and wetland area, they are at least meeting the 20% open space. With that being 250 lots, the gross density is going to remain at the 1.41 dwelling units per acre for the subdivision. And then the subdivision will still consist of single family detached residential. There was a neighborhood meeting requirement for this project, and that was held on July 16th via Zoom with the existing residents of the Saratoga Falls and Kitchell Lake subdivision. The purpose of the meeting was to gather any feedback and concerns with the residents on the sketch plan. Approximately 30 residents did attend that meeting, and their concerns were noted in that observation report. And the meeting was recorded and available on the town's website for viewing. There were also about 5 public comments that were submitted that were on your desk for the subdivision as well. I don't know if those folks are in attendance here tonight, but we had received those today that were then provided for your review. And then staff has reviewed the sketch plan against the sketch plan required review criteria. And found that it is in conformance with the sketch or the review criteria as it provides, it meets with the comprehensive plan, meets the comprehensive plan designation, it meets the zoning, and it does. It provides a adequate transportation facility, meets the requirements of essentially the 2014 plan with the number of lots that are out there. With that, I will turn it over to Kristen if she's hiding somewhere here for her presentation.
Do I just click side to side? Can you guys hear me? Perfect. You always have to test with the mask, right? My name is Kristen Turner and I'm with TB Group. We've been working on the planning on this project for many years now. So I'll tell you a little bit about the project, but also wanted to let you know that we do have our team here tonight. So if questions come up, we have traffic and engineering and the developer for the property as well that is here and happy to introduce themselves and answer questions as well. And does this have a pointer, a laser pointer? Okay, no problem. I may just ask you to circle at some point. So I believe that everybody here is familiar with the site, but just in case, you can see the site in blue. Saratoga Falls first and second filing are located to the west. We have county land to the east and to the north and also to the south. And the new school site over to a little bit farther to the west as well, just to give you a quick introduction to where we're located. And this is the sketch plan. So we won't spend too much time here, but as Kevin said, you know, the purpose of the sketch plan, the look of the sketch plan has changed since the approved 2014 sketch. And now what we present and ask for approval on is more of a bubble plan to give you a big idea of how access is going to work, where parks are going to be located, and where residential pods will be located. From there, when we get into platting, we start to dive into more of the details about it, but we do a conceptual design that goes along with this. It's a supporting document just to give you an idea of what we're thinking and how we sort of developed those bubbles, the background behind it. We've got 177 acres here. And as it was mentioned earlier, the density for this will be 1.4 units to the acre. So this will be the lowest density portion of the subdivision that is built. We are sticking with the approved 2014 sketch, 250 lots, no changes there. So this is the approved 2014 sketch. And then this is the proposed concept. So this is sort of what we based our sketch, our bubble plan off of. And I won't spend too much time here. I'll move on so you can see the side by side and sort of compare. So the approved 2014 sketch calls for 250 lots. That is exactly what we are proposing on this plan. As you'll see, you see a lot of curvilinear roads in this subdivision on both of the plans. Lots and lots of green space on both of these plans, many parks, pocket parks, open space. The wetlands area in the third filing area is to remain where it is and will be enhanced as a feature. Tons of trail connections through the subdivision. So a lot of similarities between that 2014 plan and the new plan that we're looking at today. The only change that we're proposing is that there is an addition of a potential PSD school site. This is at the request of the school district. Our team definitely supports having this school site here. We think it's good for the subdivision. We think it's good for the community, for schools to land where the school district thinks it's important for them to be, where they're identifying a need for those schools to be built. So you see that sort of in the center of the site, and it's labeled as the potential school site. Okay, so side by side, just so you can see the sketch and then that supporting concept that we use to help develop the sketch. So as you'll notice, we have a lot of large open space areas, multiple parks that are shown on the plan. And one of the things I wanted to talk about right off the bat, and Kevin touched on it as well, is the open space. So on the bubble plan, the sketch plan, you see these large yellow tracts, which are residential tracts. So if we look at just tract C as an example, and if you're able to sort of draw your mouse around that, it's just to the north and west of the purple PSD site. What we've got is about 33 acres there in that area. And then if you look at the concept plan, oh, did I go back? Thanks. Yep, so right around there. So if you look at that concept plan there, you can see how much green space is built into that, even though on the sketch plan, it's shown all as yellow and all as residential. So if you look just at that green open space area in the middle of that tract C, that, for example, is about 8 to 9 acres of open space. So even though on that sketch plan you see things called out as residential, it doesn't mean that you're not going to see a significant amount of green space on the plans moving forward as well. We're designing this subdivision so that all of the lots back to open space or green belts, there will be no rear lot lines that are adjacent to each other. We have a significant trail system that runs through the property, and it's a mix of concrete trails and soft surface trails, multiple pocket parks. There'll be a mix of different amenities that are worked into the plan as well. And these lots that you're seeing in the proposed concept plan are all consistent with the lots that are developed in first and second filing as well. So lot sizes range and are exactly the same as what you see in the existing filings that are either built or being built today. All right, so this is a quick look at our trail system. The big blue line that runs from north to south is the Prost Trail. This will be a regional trail for Timnath that connects a larger trail system, so a really important piece of trail system for the community that would run through this property. Everything that you see in red is a concrete trail that runs through the property, and the purple lines are the soft surface trails. So we really looked for a mix of trail types to give people an opportunity for a different experience on a hard surface versus a soft surface trail, and what the landscaping might be like in those different areas as well. As you can see, I think if I can count really quickly, we've got 7 pedestrian access points connecting over to first and second filing, so great connections between third filing and the rest of the subdivision. And when you look at this plan overall, just these trails that are shown, we're showing 4.2 miles of trail just in the third filing, and that does not include any of the detached sidewalk system that runs along all of the road network. So really good pedestrian connections here. So this is just an enlargement showing the area up around the lake and one of the pocket parks. We will be providing a clubhouse and a pool, and so we show that up in the corner of that park. It's a conceptual layout right now, but just to show that that is intended to be developed as part of this subdivision, as well as the dock so that people have access out to the water. It'll be for non-motorized boats, but paddleboards, kayaks, things like that. So it'll give folks good access to get out and enjoy that water. So some of the amenities that we're going to have at the subdivision, we'll have a bunch of different park types. You'll see playgrounds, you'll see active parks, you'll see passive parks, some pocket parks where people can just chill out and have it be a little more quiet. Ball fields so that there's areas for people to throw a Frisbee or play soccer. As I mentioned, we will have a clubhouse and we will have a pool. We're committed to that as part of this community. We've got multiple kinds of trail systems. So again, a different feel with that concrete versus soft surface and the type of experience that you have when you're on those. We will have a dock as well so that folks have access to the water, which currently there's so much vegetation. It's a lovely amenity visually, but it's not actually accessible. So we're looking forward to being able to bring that feature available to the community. We'll have some formal planting areas, and we will also, the wetlands area, we're looking at keeping nice and native, doing some restoration and some enhancement planting there, but we really want to maintain the look and feel around that wetland area through the spine of the site. So this lands us back on the sketch plan, which is the bubble plan. And that's really what I have to cover today. So I'm going to scoot forward one where we have the comparison between 2014 and the concept plan that our sketch is based on, just because I anticipate this is where most of the questions will land. But I'll leave it there. And if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Staff, anything to add before we open it up for public comment, which I think would be appropriate next?
Nothing to add, but in regards to public comment, since we do have folks over in our community room for overflow, what we're going to do is we're going to call out basically first, second, and third. So if there are folks over there, it gives them the ability to get over here in time to make their public comment.
Okay, commissioners, everybody okay with that? All right, we'll leave it up to staff to manage this. Let's open the public comment then.
Okay,
How many? Was that a sign? As down.
Please remind folks to limit their comments to 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, like I said, I'm out of practice here. Yeah, for those in the room and anybody listening and all the ships at sea, if you will, that's please limit your comments to 3 minutes. I would also add if there's a designated spokesperson that if everybody's going to repeat the same thing and you want to designate somebody to state your case on behalf of any number of people, that would be welcome as well. But we will allow everybody who wants to speak their 3 minutes.
Okay, first up we have Carol Folkrod. Second up we have Bill Grush. And third up we have John Weiss.
Hi, my name is Carol Folkrod, and I did not receive a notice of mailing for this meeting. But I've been coming to meetings for 15 years now for Saratoga Falls. It's a long time. So I have a question about, I have a lateral ditch, which comes from the main ditch to my property, which is east of the subdivision. And it looks like, and I know it's a sketch plan, but looks like it's going to be, looks like it's going to be going underneath homes. Well, I'd like to know how that's going to work. And then my driveway will be where the new Prospect meets County Road 3. And I'd like to know how that's going to actually flow into those streets. It's hard to tell from the small sketch plan. It looks like there's a small rectangle between my driveway and the main roads. But I have to make sure that I'm going to have access for farming equipment to get into my driveway and onto my property. Also, I read in the information for this meeting tonight, there are going to be construction of water lines along Prospect Road and County Road 3. I'm hoping, and I know that's a necessity, but I'm hoping that will be very minimal because we've had a lot of impacts on our traffic in that area with I-25 and Prospect intersection, the new high school area going in, the subdivision that's already there now. So I'm hoping that can be minimal disturbances for our ingress and egress into those areas. And then this is for the Planning Commission, and I think this was asked at another meeting. There's a roadside trail and also a community trail that I saw on the information for this meeting tonight. And it goes across County Road 3, and it looks like it goes right through my property. And so that concerns me quite a bit, two different trails in two different locations going through my property. So those are my questions, and I'd like to have those addressed.
So Carol, right?
Carol, yes.
Carol, so let's follow our previous plan. I see Matt, Kevin taking notes. So the staff will know these things. Kristen, you and your team know how this works. Let's have you hopefully jotting these things down back there. We won't address these, Carol, individually, but we'll circle back to these. I also know, as Matt is good at doing, there may be some things that where we'll have to connect you with staff directly and have them address these things if they can't necessarily be addressed tonight. So we've got I think staff and Kristen got some notes there, and then we'll try and address these after we hear from everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm. You're welcome.
And Dawn, is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Carol, I assume your property is in the county to the east of this project. Okay.
Next comment.
Hi, I'm Bill Grush. I'm a 10-year resident of Filing 1 in Saratoga Falls. Our big concern is again, this is the school district property, and the developer would like us to believe that 16 acres is going to have a little bit of school building, maybe some parking and playgrounds. And for all we know, the way school security is going, when the school district decides to develop that property, they may put a chain link fence and razor wire around that. And it's not going to be anything that's going to be like open space to the residents. We don't know what's going to happen, and it's disingenuous for the developer to paint this pretty picture of space that would be usable to us. A big concern also, and with so the number of homes ought to be reduced, and Don Simpson has some numbers on that. I fully support his numbers. If you look at the 2014 plan and look at the south side of the reservoir, you look at how much space there is between the water and those houses. And what they've done now is they've pushed all the houses up there as close as they can to the reservoir and left this 10 acres down beside Prospect Road to the south and west of the school property with nothing. I'd like to see them move more of those houses down away from the reservoir and allow better access to the reservoir area. The other thing that's notable is that on the 2014 plan, the partial G there on the Dead Man Lake side of Prospect, there's nothing there in the 2014, and now they're putting houses there. And it should be noted that a year ago when this came before the town council, the town said they really did not want to see development in that area designated as partial G. Anytime that I have left, I'll relinquish to Don Simpson when it's his turn to talk. Thank you.
Next, please.
And then Don Simpson.
Evening, John Weiss, 898 Skipping Stone Court in Timnath, Saratoga Falls. It's a bubble plan, but it's contingent upon the school district buying that acreage. And I've read the staff report, and I don't see anything within the staff report or anything presented that clearly delineates that the school district and the developer have entered into an agreement, and that either the school district is going to purchase the land or the developer is going to donate the land. You can't have a bubble plan. You're making assumptions based on the fact that two entities are going to come to an agreement. I think the agreement needs to be front and center. So based on that, then you can move forward. So for that reason alone, I would urge you to deny this application until such time that that agreement is firm. Assuming you decide that my idea is not a good one, I would remind you that the 2014 plan did not include a school site. So as I mentioned at the last town council meeting, developer wants it both ways. The developer selling or doing something with 16 plus acres, but is not offsetting the number of homes. He wants you to think he's meeting that initial 250 home requirement, which had a much higher open space. So he's reducing the open space from what was agreed in 2014 in order to get where he's at today. And I'm not really sure that's what you really want. And then finally, one of my pet peeves, and I realize this is a bubble plan, but I read the staff report, and really it doesn't address all these other issues like environmental impacts, road impacts, water impacts. It says, well, we'll deal with that once we get going. I don't know how you're supposed to figure out whether or not you need 50 extra feet on Prospect for additional expansion of the width of Prospect. I mean, I would think the developer would want to know whether or not you're going to charge them an extra $5 million in order to maybe widen the road or do these other improvements. Do it now. You always seem to put the cart before the horse. And I honestly don't think that's a wise way to plan things, especially with the impact. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Next.
Am I on? Pat Webb, 1015 Terrace View Street. This is the fourth or fifth time I've been to meetings regarding this development. We start with the 2014 plan. And I think a couple of you on the Planning Commission were part of the 2014, that the City Council said, yeah, we have densities, but the development in the north and specifically our tracks were to be lower density. And I specifically remember council members saying we don't need another Timnath ranch. Secondly, we're missing a very important chart. And that is, do you have a comparison of the one that was rejected by the City Council compared to the new one? Because it's not different. And specifically related to that, when does the planning department have the authority to override what the City Council said they wanted? And I was on that neighborhood meeting, and you were on it, Jim. And you were running it. And the Grushes specifically asked about that Puss Pocket development that's down there on the south side of Prospect. And they specifically said, we do not want this development split with homes south of Prospect. And yet, when we were asked, you guys said, this is a new plan. We never heard about that. Well, the City Council said, we don't want that. And yet you guys are saying that's okay. And that's not right. There's a whole bunch of other issues where that Puss Pocket is. There's 3 driveways in that land that go to other ag land. You're creating a mess. And in my opinion, this is worse than the plan that we had before. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Don Simpson. I'm 901 Skipping Stone, Saratoga Falls. We built our house, moved in 2015. 2014 was when the plan was approved that authorized 250 homes. The balance of the property was to be in open space. And as you can see on the left side, there's a nice buffer along the lake for recreational wildlife. Take a look at the right side, everything has been pushed up. So next thing we know, December last year, we get a proposal. I think Pat brought that up a second ago. So there was a proposal for another 83 homes taken out of open space, 16 acres for a schoolhouse taken out of open space. All of that open space was moved down to the south along Prospect, Deadman's Curve, not the most valuable open space for us in phases 1 and 2, and most of the people in 3. It's way off, basically not usable recreation space. And then, of course, the houses were pushed up along the lake. So City Council denied that. We all thought that was the right decision. And here we are 8 months later, and we have another proposal that's pretty much identical. It's taken out the 83 houses. So it's going back and using the metric of it's the same as the other plan because it's 250 houses. So I guess what I would like to suggest is that as you consider this proposal, go back to the 2014 plan and look at this 2020 plan. My biggest concern is the open space. That plan loses open space along the lake. There's 2 pocket parks. One of them is full of parking lots, swimming pools, and a clubhouse. So it's not really open space along the lake. So if you compare the open space in 2014, it was 95 acres. This proposal, 41 acres. And I'm just taking this off the maps, the one that was approved and the one that's proposed. They talked about 54% functional open space in 2014. If you look at 41 acres right now and recognize that 23 acres of it's scattered down there along Dead Man's Curve and way south along Prospect, you're down to 10% functional open space. So to me, that's probably our largest concern, is why we can't put that open space back up to the top. So my recommendation is we do 3 things. Well, first, I'd suggest that we reject this proposal. But if they want to come back, I think they ought to recognize that 16 acres of houses, if you look at the pods, they're saying it's 4 housing units per acre. 4 times 16, take 64 homes off of 250. Now you're starting to have a comparable project. Then take that 16 acres and move it back up along the lake where the wildlife and the recreation habitat is. And I'm not trying to be selfish for Saratoga Falls, but phase 1, 2, and 3 of this area will benefit. All the residents of Timnath will benefit. Right now, the way those homes are scrunched up there, there's really no opportunity to enjoy that lakefront. And then finally, I would look down on Prospect, take about 20 of those acres, move those up. The only pocket park the only park that you can see is the one that Kristen pointed out. But if you look at the rest of those homes, they're packed in there pretty tight. If they could move that 20 acres up, spread that out, I think it'd be more enjoyable for all the residents out there. So I would strongly recommend that you reject this proposal and consider those 3 things. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Don. Anybody else signed up?
Yes, we have 2 more. We have Pete Borlett and then Peter Champion.
My name's Pete Bowley. I live in 916 Skipping Stone, near most of these guys. So on December the 19th, December the 10th, as we already noted, Timnath Town Council unanimously rejected, denied the previous proposal, Resolution 65. And many of the reasons were it did not mitigate negative impact on land use, concerns about potential for additional traffic due to the increase in density, as well as reduction in overall usable open space. At the time when talking to the developers, they said if they couldn't get the additional lots, they would pull out of this development, and yet they're still here. They also noted that they would be using toll brothers to build homes along the back of Saratoga Falls, and again, that's been pulled out. So we're now seeing homes from American Legend. So on the 11th of August, it has been noted that you guys approved the ability for these developers to come back in. No business justification was given as to why within the minutes, why they could come back in a shorter time. What is in there in those minutes is that somebody, John Wise, spoke to the council about the plans, and these are in the minutes, of the developer regarding the school site to be used as open space, and stated that the number of homes need to be reduced. So that is minuted. So like the other guys in here, we all think that the developer needs to go back and really not come back with another plan, because we've had one approved in 2014. We had it approved again in 2019. How many times does the same plan need to be approved before it sticks? And
sir, make sure you're on the microphone there, okay? So everybody else, we can hear you, but not sure anybody else.
And so the last point is really, this plan seems to be all about the Purdue School District potential. And as John Wise pointed out, how can you approve a plan based on a potential? There needs to be something a lot more firm than a potential to approve a change to a plan that's been approved twice. I think that's it.
Thank you.
I'm Peter Champion. I'm 5580 Homeward. I guess I'm the only one from actual Ketchel Lake that's excited about this. I came from Loveland. Everything in Loveland is smashed. So to me, this is awesome. Where I live, open space. The idea of a potential school is great. I've got 2 daughters, another one on the way. So having a school within walking distance would be amazing, especially since there's a school pretty much across the street being built. It'd be kind of nice to have an elementary school to go along with that middle high school they're building right there at 5 in Prospect. I didn't really see the same issues everyone else did about kind of squeezing in there. I kind of understand the logistics of can't afford to build it if there's no money. They have to be able to afford to pay it. I know the towns are pushing the cost of infrastructure off on the builders. Since I'm from Ketchel Lake, not building the third filing kind of hurts us, since the third filing help kind of expands the metro district that I'm paying for, that the first filing's not. So I'd kind of like to spread out the cost a little bit more on that extra 250 homes instead of narrow it down and make my piece of the pie a little higher. Not quite sure what else to say, except for I was kind of excited when I saw it. I've been excited. I was excited about the subdivision when it came in. I liked it enough. Obviously, I moved here, so figured you need at least one person to say they think it's a good idea. All right. Thanks for your time, guys.
Thank you, Peter. Is that it, or do we have anybody else? I thought we had one part. No?
I was from the overflow room. So my name's Joe Sennett, one of the new residents of Kitchell Lake. I'm on 5221 Kellen Court. I really just want to echo what the previous gentleman said. We moved here for the open space that's already been incorporated, and we're really happy with it, right? Our particular lot is about 1/3 of an acre, so we've got ample space for our own residents. But what drew us to the neighborhood was that all of the homes really do back up to open space, whether it's a 3 or 5 acre park. And we think that's great. In addition to that, several residents have moved in to Kellen Court over the last, we'll just call it month. Most of them have families, and they're all very excited about the possibility of an elementary school being within walking distance of those residents. What I also like about how this development was planned initially, as well as how it continues to be planned, is there may be, at least within our neighborhood, minimal impact to some of the traffic, because those kids, if you grew up like in Southeast Denver like I did back in the 80s, these trails provide really easy access for those kids to wander on home without the need necessarily for parents to pick them up. I actually think it's a really great plan. I do appreciate how some of the folks who've moved into the area earlier than I have obviously have put the time and effort into really analyzing the plan, and maybe there should be some additional considerations made for their concerns. But that being said, several of us that have just moved into the neighborhood are extremely excited about the idea of a school being in the community where we don't necessarily have to bus people around. So thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hang on. I just want to make sure we're going to have to see if we've got all comments accommodated. We do? Okay, good. We'll close the public comment, particularly for the rather technical questions I think that our first speaker, Carol, asked. I assume you all have taken some notes. So let's bring Kristen up, or anybody else from your team, Kristen, and along with staff, let's see how many of these we can tackle. And staff, I'll leave it up to you as your usual fine job of connecting directly with residents for anything that you need to do that for. Thanks, Kristen.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have some other folks on the team that are going to help with some of these questions. I'm going to run through everything that I think I can answer. Then we'll look to Andy for some help with Ms. Folkrod's questions about Prospect and the ditch and the water line. And we do have a representative from the school district here as well that can help answer some of those questions. Yes? Okay. Double check it. I know who's in the room. So starting at the top of the list, I think there was a comment from Mr. Brush about if the school will really be usable open space for the community. The school sites are open with the exception of the few hours where kids are in school during the day. They are open in the mornings, the afternoons, and the weekends as well. So it's important to remember that kind of regardless of how security changes, I know at my kids' school, they lock the gates during school hours and then they're unlocked when parents come to pick them up and they remain unlocked for the rest of the time. So we regularly use playgrounds and fields and are able to enjoy that. Another thing to keep in mind about the school site as well, and the school district can probably expand on this a little bit more, but really when you look at that bubble in the middle, I know I heard the concern that it's a lot of acreage that goes to the school district and that's no longer open space. But generally, and I'm going to give you super conservative numbers, when you look at a school site for an elementary school, you do have a building, you do have some hardtop play areas, and you do have some parking. But overall, it's probably about 40% of the site maximum, with about 60% of the site being for fields and playgrounds and green space. So of that space that is being reserved for the school district, quite a bit of it will still be soft surface and accessible. And then when we get into the process with the school district as well, you know, we sort of reserve the maximum size they may need initially. To ensure that they can have a viable development when they get there. But as they get into actual planning during the platting process, it happens during the platting process or after, confirming that, you know, access works and what are the depths and how would things fit on this site. It is also possible that they may say, hey, we don't need 16 acres, we need 13 acres or whatever it may be. So there is the opportunity that that parcel size for the school district can shrink as well. If the school district doesn't move forward with this site, and that would be up to them to determine, I know folks they're looking at this because this is their community, and I can understand that, right? We're passionate about our communities, but the school district is looking at school sites holistically for the entire community and where they see the need for a school and where they're seeing more kids starting to be located so that we don't have to bus kids all over town. So that kids can walk to school and have safe access. So if they determined in the future, you know, it turns out there's a better site, or this, at the time they're ready to build, this isn't where we want to put the school, then that space reverts back to open space. It doesn't turn into new homes. It doesn't turn into anything else that's buildable. It becomes open space again. So hopefully that answers a few of the questions about the school. And like I said, the school district will be able to provide more information on how all the agreements work. Those agreements typically aren't hashed out until kind of the end of the platting process, is when things are finalized, when you have legal descriptions for where roads actually are so they know what true boundaries are. But what they request of us is, hey, hang on to this parcel at about this size so that we know we have some space to work at if we determine that this is really the most appropriate space for a school district. So while we heard that some people are concerned that there really needs to be an agreement in place, it would not be possible for this development team to say to the school district, we changed our mind, you can't have your school here. So there is kind of, with the approval of the sketch showing the school district as well, there is a level of agreement that's in place. Let's see, so lots south of Prospect. You know, we have looked at this area and we've had a lot of discussions with staff and the team about this. Originally, what that area was looked at was a community park, and the feedback we received was access across Prospect is going to be highly challenging. What would that really turn into? The concern is that it would turn into kind of no eyes on it, where trash is kind of getting thrown out of a car on the side of the road. It's not really being utilized. And so what we're proposing here is that we move a small handful of lots. I think we're showing 13 lots. They would be large, really nice lots. The only folks that would need to access south of Prospect would be those individuals that are accessing those lots. You'll notice that the road actually curves up into a cul-de-sac to access those lots, and then there is a stub that curves to the south as well. So there was a question about how is access going to be provided to those properties to the south. So we're showing it in the conceptual planning, but as part of platting as well, we would also be required to show that road access. So no existing driveways will be eliminated. There will always be access to existing properties. What that also does is it pulls a handful of lots of those 250 that are proposed in third filing out of the northern section, which opens up more open space in the area where the bulk of the residents are located for first, second, and third filing. And it makes that open space walkable, bikeable, easier to access since we're not crossing a major arterial. So that's part of the reasoning and the logic that went behind locating those properties south of Prospect. There were some comments and questions about access to the lake and open space along the lake. And it can be hard to see at this scale, but what I wanted to point out is that there's a pretty significant buffer. It certainly varies in areas, but there is a buffer behind the back of lots that runs all the way around the lake. It does provide ample room to have a trail that runs from the very northern section of those lots. So that north cul-de-sac, there'd be a connection there. It would run all the way down around the lake. And up the other side. And then it would have multiple access points where it comes into the community. So folks can access that trail from different parts of the community. Another concern that I heard was about the clubhouse and the pool being located right next to the lake. And that area isn't designed yet, but that is the area that we're looking at for a clubhouse and a pool, as well as access to the dock, which gives you that access to the waterfront. It would be directly connected to the trail, so it would provide good pedestrian connections for the entire community to be able to get to that location. And it's really centrally located. If you look at where we've put it on the plan as well, kind of right in the middle, you know, it's almost right in the middle of second and third filing. With some of the strongest connections, pedestrian and vehicular, over to first filing as well. So we tried to make it centrally located, but we'd like to integrate that pool, clubhouse, and dock location together, which puts it in that location of being closer to the lake, obviously, so that the dock has something to access. There were a couple comments about the acreage of open space. And just a reminder, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but the acreage that's listed on the sketch plat is based on the bubble plan. And as Kevin described, it's based on those designated pocket parks, spaces that we know aren't going to be developed. But when you look at the sketch plan, the bubble plan, and the concept plan together, you see there's significantly more open space that actually occurs in those residential bubbles. So, you know, it's probably double what is listed on the sketch plan is what you would actually end up seeing by the time you have all of the green belts and open spaces. And that example was that parcel C, which you can see right there in the middle. And that's a really big green blobby shape in the middle of the plan. There's about 3 or 4 trail connections that are running through that, and that alone is just under 9 acres. So I just wanted to remind everybody that, you know, the numbers that are listed on the sketch plan are a little bit deceptive in terms of what will actually end up in a plat because of the nature of the type of plan being a bubble plan. Let me run through this really quickly, see if I missed anything. I know there were some comments about this being too dense. So just to reiterate, you know, this is completely consistent with the 2014 plan. There are only 250 lots shown. The density for third filing is 1.4 units to the acre. And as you all know, this property has R2 zoning, which would allow for 400 units, or I'm sorry, 4 units to the acre, which would actually end up being about 700 homes, I think, just in the third filing area if it was built to its maximum capacity. So this is clearly being built at a very, very low density with tons of open space, and lots of good pedestrian connections. So certainly not a dense property by any means. Probably one of the least dense subdivisions you'll see in this area, Fort Collins, Timnath, Windsor. It's really got a lot of nice open space. Okay, so I think that is everything that I'm going to cover, and I'll have Andy come on up, and then we'll just keep passing along till we get to all those questions. And if we miss anything, let us know.
Because I didn't understand so many of the questions Carol asked, I'm going to rely on staff. Don's nodding over there.
Andy's gonna help with that as well.
We'll give Andy a crack at that too, and let's make sure we answer all those. And I know your team usually does a good job of that, so I just want to keep it moving along in that direction. Thank you.
You bet.
Good evening. I'm Andy Reese with Northern Engineering. We're the civil engineer for the project. In answer to Carol's questions, one of her first questions was about the irrigation lateral that is going to be, or currently is underneath homes. Its current location is under homes. Our intention is
Andy, make sure you're on the mic there, especially with the mask. It's hard even for us to hear you.
Yeah, is that a little better?
Yeah, much better if you would.
Regarding the irrigation ditch, that the existing location is underneath of proposed homes, our expectation is actually to realign that ditch to the north and then east side of the property. We will be putting it into a pipe as currently planned, which should deliver water in a quality that's equal to or better than what she's currently getting. We're gonna have less losses from infiltration and those sorts of things. So definitely intending to continue delivering water though, via that lateral to the same point on her property. Another question that she asked about was the driveway access and how that's going to work. I think there was talk about it being to Prospect, but my understanding is that that's actually to Larimer County Road 3. And our expectation, that road is moving and curving. We're still kind of in the preliminary stages of this design, but our expectation is to actually keep that driveway and just extend it to the new roadway alignment. And we'll be looking at kind of intersection spacing and driveway spacing and those sorts of things to make sure that it's safe. But the intent is to keep it in its more or less in its current location. It'll probably be improved and be paved further than it currently is. And then as far as the question about the water line construction and kind of the traffic impacts, there are plans from ELCO, which is the East Larimer County Water District, to put in 12-inch lines, both in Prospect as well as up Larimer County Road 3. There's also some discussions about additional offsite improvements at this point. Unfortunately, those probably will impact the roads and the traffic out there, similar to what we're seeing adjacent to the second filing, as well as with the PSD project. In addition to that, there's also going to be roadway improvements. We're going to be widening and improving Larimer County Road 3, as well as Prospect. And so it hurts, and I know it's a pain out here, particularly with all of the different projects happening at once. But there probably will be additional impacts from those improvements. The benefit is that there's going to be much, much better water capacity and service out here, as well as redundancy if there are breaks in the future. I think that was all of her questions. Did staff have any others that I missed?
Yeah, there's one additional question was about the roadside trail, community trail. And if you want, I can take that now or.
Yeah, absolutely. And Don, it looked like you were looking to jump in there on the road something.
Yeah, no, I think Andy handled that real well. If Carol has any more questions about access or any of that, we'd be happy to talk to her offline and be assured that all access will be continued to all properties around and nothing's going to be cut off for sure.
Carol, I'd suggest you if you haven't, get their contact information, and you have it. Okay, good. And Matt, I know you had something to offer.
Thanks, Chairperson. So the trails that we're referencing at the big picture are on our pros plan to start with, as kind of indicating desire kind of a thing, intent. It's kind of that larger network of trail system that we're trying to interconnect and provide community-wide connections. When we get down to the level of actually this kind of a detail, this is still sketch plan, so there's going to be some of that where trails are shown may not be exactly where they're going to end up. That the thickness of that line is probably 50 feet wide in reality when it's only a 10-foot wide trail. So there are some, scaling issues that are happening. So when we actually get to the platting stage of a project, we'll start to, at staff level, we'll get those into the correct locations. They won't be running across people's property if that property owner, it's private property, it can't physically go there without their permission or consent. If it were, it may end up in the right of way, for example. So if there's an additional right of way for Prospect Road that's dedicated, it's wider, it gives the opportunity for a roadside trail that could be 10 feet wide that's detached and meandering along the edge of the road. So those types of details, aren't readily apparent here. And so there's a little bit of and then the actual destination of those trails may not be yet determined. So the intent is put there as a starting point. There's no end point until such time as future properties develop, and then they perpetuate that trail system. So there's this kind of build it first, build it with these projects so that that intent is already integrated, and then it's added potential for adding on to it in the future. I hope that kind of addresses those questions.
Kristen, anybody else from your team? I know you have a representative here from the school district, and we'd be remiss in not giving an opportunity for brief comments there, please.
Good evening. My name is Brendan Willits. I'm the planning manager with Poudre School District, who's trying to break your microphone. Thank you for the opportunity to address a couple of the comments. First, we don't put razor wire on any of our schools. We will put a chain link fence generally around them, and that is to not really control who's coming in and out of our sites, but to control where people are coming in and out of our sites. We take security very seriously. We will put a 6-foot chain link fence around all of our open spaces. We will also have access points and places for people to come and go. But we do take security very seriously, just not to the extent that it's over a 6-foot chain link fence. And we would never put razor wire or concertina wire on any of our sites. We provide a lot of open space. She was correct, about 40%. It might actually be a little high depending on the site and depending on what detention ponds and other items we're putting on our sites. The current elementary school that we're building in the city of Loveland, but it will service students from the town of Timnath, is right around 72,000 square feet. That's on a 15-acre site. So, the building footprint itself, plus we have fields, we have our parking lots, but I can't imagine it would be, I haven't run the numbers today, but I can't imagine it would be much more than about 40%. So there's a lot of open space in the form of fields. We have a lot of trees and things of that nature on our site. So there is quite a bit of open space on our sites as we build them. A good example is being built right now, and that's in the city of Loveland. But Bethke is our most recent elementary school, and it's our most recent model prior to our Loveland school, and that is right here in the town of Timnath. We do offer a lot of other amenities to the public. We have building rentals, which is an extremely cheap way for people to rent and use our buildings. A lot of after hours, a lot of Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, things of that nature, karate clubs, churches. People are constantly renting our sites. It is very reasonable. We're not making money by any stretch. We're there to provide a service to the community. And we believe that is an important part of what schools offer, is a place for kids to go play in the open fields. Regrettably, because of COVID, we've shut down our playgrounds, but I don't imagine this will last forever, or at least I hope not. So we do offer a lot of open space and available space for people outside of our school hours. Obviously, during school hours, we don't want people wandering around our sites without permission to be there or reason or cause to be there, and we do monitor those closely. To address a couple of the other things, original conversations between Jim and myself have dated back years at the time. I know it's referenced in 2014, 15. I thought it was a little later, but this was our second choice for an elementary school site. The first choice kind of fell through, and that is why conversations with Jim and myself have picked back up over the last year or two. The reality is we need a school site. PSD relies on educating kids. That is our job, and that's what we try to stick with. We're not developers, but we do need land, and we do need land for schools. We're building the Prospect School site, which will benefit Timnath greatly at the northwest corner of County Road 5 in Prospect, but we don't have an elementary school site right now north of Timnath Elementary. So as the growth plans, and I work with your town staff, those growth plans have a lot of houses in the north. We don't have an elementary school site that can serve anything further north than Timnath Elementary. There is a need. I've identified that need in our master plan starting in late 2014 and published in 2015. I've been working with town staff. Matt and Kevin are great about helping keep the school district up to date. But we are going to need a school site at some point up there to service the elementary school kids. If there is not one, busing is the alternative, and that doesn't work well for anyone. It messes with traffic, congestion, and no one wants to send their K-5 students on a bus for a lengthy period of time to reach a school. We do try to bury our elementary school sites in single-family detached and multifamily neighborhoods such as this. This is one of the only few options left, and that is, the reality for PSD at the moment. We are not under contract with Jim. I believe I would love to lock him in at the price we've been discussing, but it would be inappropriate for the school district. I couldn't recommend my board to authorize or to enter into an option agreement before the subdivision is a little further along. Before we commit those kinds of funds, we have to have a firm plan in place, and we have to know that this is coming. This is not something we're going to be building next year. We would have to pass a bond to build this elementary school. So we're a ways out, but I have been in contact with my legal multiple times. I believe I have a ballpark of a reasonable price that Jim is looking at for the school district site for a sale. It is under market value, I will tell you that. And so I appreciate that on behalf of the school district. But it would be inappropriate for me to recommend an option agreement to my board at this time in the current status of this neighborhood. I hopefully will be able to take that to my board if this subdivision progresses along. I have told my board on numerous occasions about this. During 3 executive sessions over the last 18 months, I've discussed elementary school sites, specifically this one, along with some other negotiations that are ongoing for other sites in other municipalities. But it would be inappropriate for me to enter in an agreement. I know that it looks odd to not have one, but it would be inappropriate for me to recommend to our board to enter into an option agreement at this time. We believe that, obviously, I work for the schools. I'm biased. We believe we provide anchors to communities. I know there is a lot of fear sometimes around schools being in people's backyards, but if you look at the reality of how that turns out years and decades later, we are an advocate for communities, and we believe we benefit communities that we are directly involved with, especially when we get in early and can work with a developer who's got such a great staff. BHA is Northern. We work with these folks on a regular basis. So if there's any specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer those, but that was trying to answer some of the comments that were made to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Mr. Willis. Anybody else from your team? Kristen, Jim, anybody else? Jim?
Ooh, it's warm under there. Let's see, I got it. How's that better? All right, well, thank you very much for having us here today. It's simple in many ways and complicated in others, but basically, we're like the 3rd or 4th developer into this project. There's a lot of history before we got involved in it. I understand the feelings that people have, and we're just trying to make this thing work. I would hope you've been able to see the section that we did where the homes are being built. There's like 110 homes moved into now. All 250 lots are sold. There's 110 about moved in. There's about 140 houses either under construction or finishing construction, whatever in there. I don't know anybody that doesn't want the school. And I talk to people all the time in there. They just don't come to a city council meeting. There clearly is, with the 90 to 100 lots in the first filing, old issues. I can't solve all the old issues. I mean, it just is what it is. So we're not asking for special treatment, but we don't want to be treated differently in a negative way. One of the comments was brought up as how many lots we should lose or what we should do. We're allowed 4 lots per acre. What was ever done years ago said, no, you can't do that. It's 1.5 per acre. We're at 1.4 or less than that. That includes not counting the school site. Remember, we're calling it, there's going to be more open space with the use of it, but we're not counting it. The open space that we will have will be double, just about double, without the school site even being counted. It'll be double what we're required because we have such low density. You have 1 house per every acre and a half. I'm saying 1.5 houses per every acre. Said it wrong. So, we've done well in the first half. We're improving the streets, the roads. The previous developer didn't even finish Prospect 5 Main Street. We're repaving all of it. That hasn't even started yet. All the undergrounding's been done along the school site and onto our site. We just moved the canal over. There's a massive amount of things that have to be done to make this work. This whole idea about the curve in there is because the city required that dead man's curve. We got to get rid of that. And we're trying to figure out some way to make this financially work out. And one of the things we thought, for 2 reasons, the finances helps us with the school site, but we also wanted the school site in there because it makes it more desirable. That's really, really important to doing it here. So there's not much more that I can say on it. We're moving forward if you guys allow us to, but I would appreciate if every one of you could go look at what we did and see the areas that, you can't see it here, but the neighborhoods that back up to Prospect have 5 and 6 acres of open space behind their houses. That's what we're doing across the way. But in the bubble plan, you don't count that 5-acre park in the middle because it's considered houses. So I'll take any questions if you have any. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim. I'm going to bring it up here to the commissioners for questions at this point. We'll try and move this along. And commissioners, who wants to go first? Marty.
Okay, so a few questions. So somebody had referenced some issues with the lots on the south side, that was creating an issue. I didn't really hear that addressed in this. So what possible issues would that create, and how those, if it does create any, what's the mitigation?
So the 2014 plan had that slated for a community park.
Yeah.
At that time, throughout the process with the previous sketch plan submittal, in discussions with staff and the developers staff, we kind of looked at that area and realized that a community park is not really the best option on that corner, just because either trying to send kids or whatnot across Prospect to there. It's basically an isolated park that has virtually no connectivity. So from those discussions, it was to where it basically didn't make sense, and it wasn't good planning to have an isolated park like that, especially across a large arterial road. Isolated. So from that's where the developer had proposed putting lots down there, which we felt was appropriate, just from the standpoint it then only has a select few lots down there. It still provides access to the farm properties to the south, as Kristen had mentioned, through connections there from that standpoint. So I hope that answers your question on that one.
I think so, but so the connections would be through that road. I have a farm, so I know what the equipment is like. So are the roads going to be appropriate for that, not necessarily to specs for residential? Because one is the width. For driveways, I need about 80 foot to get everything, all of my stuff in. And plus, I don't pave them because I'm going to crack it all up. So I didn't know, you know, how is that going to work with bringing, if they're bringing farm equipment in?
Yeah, well, I'll turn that to Don.
Okay, and I'll look to Andy at some point, but I don't see any issue with the typical farm equipment going in on residential roads. I mean, they're built to handle that kind of stuff. If in fact we wanted, how many acres of farm and how much equipment's going on there? Do we have any idea of that?
It's all the acreage that's just south of Prospect. I mean, there are multiple farm parcels down there, so.
Okay, and this is the only access to it?
No,
there's multiple along Prospect.
Yeah, so I would expect there to be multiple areas where they would access their property and not just this one. In fact, I think this one would probably be the last one they would use.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, to kind of speak to that a little bit more, the existing Prospect Road, it's kind of interesting. We initially thought we were just going to do like a mill and overlay, and we would then just widen it. Prospect as it exists today only has about 2 to 3 inches of asphalt over an old road base, and it's holding up fine with what is happening today. Our intention is to maintain the access along the south part. We'll keep this essentially what is the existing Prospect Road, where a vehicle would access using that drive from Prospect that would curve down to the south, and it would kind of split off like a manifold almost. And those existing properties could be accessed from that existing, what is there today, Prospect Road.
Okay. So other question is, along the lake is there any like nesting areas or rookeries that you've seen that would be disturbed by this?
Not to our knowledge, and I don't know if Jim or Tony, Jim or Tony, do you have any?
I'm sorry, we can't, unfortunately, maybe staff can offer something here, but. There's a nesting box. All right, go ahead, I'll allow it. Go ahead, but staff, do you have any recollection of what was brought up at the council meeting, as the gentleman was alluding to?
So the CPW, we route all of our applications to Colorado Parks and Wildlife and Natural Resources, and they review all these plans, and they have on their mapping where all the natural rookeries and areas are. So they didn't identify this as one of those locations, so we rely upon their input on that.
Marty, any further thoughts on that before you move on to other questions? What, any direction you want to offer or
I guess
suggest?
I would, if we're, you know, some advice, go take a look because they're not always accurate. I know from where I live.
Yeah, and I actually had met with the CPW on Wild Wing, and they actually, even though there might be blue heron that end up at Wild Wing and short reservoirs like that, there was no actual evidence of a rookery. So this might be the same case that there might not be a known rookery there or something like that, but it still might be somewhere where they land at times. Which is why we wouldn't have heard from Natural Resources or anyone like that on
Hang on a
having any
sec,
concerns.
Pat, right? I'm sorry, but we closed public comment, but I would ask you to connect with the staff and maybe you can offer something and it can be passed along to us, but it's inappropriate to take debate once we've closed public comment. Thanks.
Chairperson, I would add too is that at this sketch plan level, it is the bubble diagram kind of a thing. So as we move into, if it does move forward, when we get into platting, those buffers are set in place. If there is some sensitivity, we would have to establish those buffers to those and adjust the plan accordingly. So not saying that there are more opportunities for that to come forward at this level. Yeah. It's not, we're talking more very high level density usage and kind of a larger discussion about circulation.
I expect my colleague will not forget to bring this back up again at that time.
No.
What else? You
Okay,
still have the
two-
floor.
Two last things. One is that designated school space. What happens to that until PSD would decide to build there? So is it left, is it made somewhat usable, with grass and things like that?
So that would be more of a plating discussion to what that actually looks like, not at a sketch plan level. It could be a discussion with the school district and at what level they would want that property to be. If it's already graded during the construction of the subdivision to get ready, then it would most likely get native seeded. Some things like that to be a natural open space from that standpoint. But that is something that would be, at a platting stage, not necessarily a sketch plan. But it would revert to some type of open space, what that would look like exactly would come at a future submittal.
Okay, so when we do get to that, we'd want some sort of agreement on it being usable. And then the last thing is, and it was talked about, so if PSD doesn't build on this, it reverts to open space. So is that a given, or is that something we need to put a condition on?
No, that would be a given. If this does not, if PSD ends up not going with this property and purchasing it, it would revert back to open space. The applicant would have to come back forward, to you again, to do a sketch plan amendment if they were to, make a change to that. But it would go back, it would revert back to an open space.
All right, thanks.
Commissioners, questions? Anybody? Staff, anything additional? You want to interject? Couple things. Marty, I heard you mention a condition. Are you inclined to propose that at this point or to wait to that point, or are you sufficiently regarding what would, because I had it in mind too about what happens to that piece of land. Your thoughts on that as it relates to the timing of possible condition. It sounds like it's an automatic, but I don't know. So it may be moot whether that's necessary, but I heard you mention that. So I'd be remiss in not asking.
No, it sounds like it's automatic, so not necessary. And then when we get to the platting phase of, just that open space and until it's built, then it would be a condition there.
Yep.
One last chance, commissioners. Lisa, I thought you had something.
Yeah, and I honestly don't know if this is appropriate, but I don't know if it's of benefit for those in the audience and others who have entered in public comment to know that we have a stack of letters that came in. So there are other public comments that we are in receipt of that.
Yep.
Yeah,
I had mentioned that in the presentation, but yeah, there was, I believe, six letters that were there, and I believe 5 were from residents that were in favor of living in the Kitchell subdivision. And then the other one was from Mr. Don Simpson, who also had made a comment tonight.
Thanks, Lisa, for pointing that out. Yeah, a couple comments I'd add. I lived in Ridgewood Hills on the south end of Fort Collins before we moved to Timnath. There were 837 homes. It was not quite built out yet when Thompson School District exercised their right to put what became Coyote Ridge Elementary. I think it's Coyote Ridge Elementary School in there. And I saw immediately, because I was unfortunately longtime member of the HOA board, saw immediately. And then when we went to sell our house, the benefit of having an elementary school particular in a development. So I think there's, as we got noted in some of these comments, it may change the dynamic for some older residents like myself, certainly, and others out here. But it also has a benefit as well for a lot of people. As far as the lots on the south end of Prospect, I never did like in the original proposal as amended. I never did like the idea of that park over there. And I think I would feel a little bit differently about this if those were not larger lots. But I think there's a certain cachet to that. And it'll be a situation where they'll choose to move over there for understanding full well that they're in an enclave of sorts separated from the rest. And I think it's a good compromise and it moves some of the density out of the rest of the development. Third, I did go out there knowing this was coming out. I did go out and drive around extensively and we like Saratoga Falls the way it started out. I also like where it's going. And I think there are a lot of amenities that are already out there and excited to see what it's going to become. So on balance, I think having this school in there and the accommodations that need to be made to this are favorable. It's very difficult for those of you out there who've been through this whole Saratoga Falls process. This is my third go around with this as well, because I've been 9 years at this. It's very difficult for us up here, feeling somewhat conflicted, different than we would if we're on the other side of the podium. So I sympathize with that. But I support this thing mainly because I see it's a balancing act, and I see there is a advantage on balance to having the elementary school in there. So I would remind commissioners, and I don't know if anybody up here when we bring this to a vote, and I should have mentioned it with the earlier, I'm a little out of practice here, but if anybody does have an objection to this after we vote, you will need to state that because that has to go to council so that they have the information of why one or more of us were in opposition with that. So with that, staff, anything else you want to add before okay, commissioners, anything else on this? Okay, I'd like to know if do we have a motion to approve item 6D, Saratoga Falls amended sketch plan?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous, 5-0. Moving forward. Thank you. We'll move on and try and get through the rest of this quickly to reports. I've got a couple things, but commissioners, anything else before I offer a couple comments? Anybody? Okay, run with it, I will. Thanks for the gifts. These are very snappy. I'm going to wear this proudly.
Yep, Wes is wearing one right now.
I know, and I appreciate you modeling it. It just looks swell on you. I just can't wait, or my wife can't wait. Again, we welcome Lisa as the mayor pro tem said, she's off probation now. I'm assuming I hoped he was joking. Yeah. In that same vein, I don't know if any of you saw, but the staff appreciate them posting our vacant position. I appreciated council giving me an opportunity to state our case a couple weeks ago that I do think they're getting an idea that there's a steep learning curve here. When asked the question, would it be better to fill positions as they become vacant or perhaps wait till there's another position? Not that I hope anybody's going anywhere. I expressed the opinion that I think we all would prefer they fill the positions. So appreciate staff getting this started. The deadline for application is September 30th, Wes, right? I believe. Okay. So, and lastly, if we could, I know we need to adjust the website to accommodate Lisa's change. And also, for some reason, Don Risden never got his photo up there.
I don't believe he was here the day we took him.
So
we will get that set up. Yeah, just send me your, prison photo and we'll put it in there.
We can take one tonight with your mask on out there in front of it.
Yeah.
I will say with the only advantage of having this mask on is it's a lot easier to keep a poker face sometimes. Sometimes I wouldn't say that if the room wasn't empty, but, and that's not to say there's any agenda there or anything. Commissioners, anything else? We'll give the staff an opportunity briefly. Anything? No. Wes, anything for us?
No, sir, just appreciate your
Matt, Kevin, anything else?
Just want to note that, yeah, we put in some community development report and statistics that typically go out to council. Like we mentioned, we're going to start getting those in more regularly with you guys. Even though it's been a while, we typically will just put the last, set of data in there for you guys, to give you an idea of what's going on recent. The other thing is, since you've already gotten them a couple times, just want to introduce you guys to Tiffany. She is our deputy town clerk. She will basically be doing Melissa's role for us here at Planning Commission. She'll be putting together packets, getting them out, taking minutes, just basically doing the whole clerking for Planning Commission. Now that we're starting to get a little bit bigger and more robust on some stuff, we're bringing in some extra hands, and so she'll be with us on Planning Commission stuff going forward. So just want to actually introduce you to her in case you actually haven't met her before. So yeah, she'll be a great addition to our Planning Commission nights. And do you want to add anything?
Yeah. So thanks, Robert, for actually coming as well, because I really appreciate.
We are also
your
going to try and have
assistance.
legal at more meetings.
Yeah, and apologize. We've had a dry spell, but it actually was somewhat serendipitous, I guess, if you want to put it that way, that we had COVID happening as well. So we didn't have a lot on the agenda, and we didn't have to try to meet during some other more stressful times. So, but we will have some things coming in the future, continuing to come forward. So hopefully we'll be a little more regular, but they'll expect some periods of no meetings and then a couple of flurries like this. So just so happened that there's coincidence that all these things stacked up on one night. So really appreciate your, and I don't want to drag it out any further than I have to, but appreciate your sticking with it this evening. So thank you for that.
Thanks. Wes? Appreciate that. I'd like to think we all think it's been like that all along, but it's nice to reiterate that. Robert, anything? Don?
Wes brought some of these Colorado revised statutes, and I was, if you've got time for it, I was just going to spend a little bit just kind of talking you through the scheme and how it's all organized. Thank you for your time tonight.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but Matt and Kevin and Brian, who's in the back room, I think still, the Timnath Community Park is in its final stages, and if you've got a chance to see that, it's turning out very well. And I am hopeful that you guys have gotten the drone footage that's been set out that give you an ability to see the progress of this thing. So,
Yeah, appreciate that. My wife's champing at the bit to get in the dog park. And I
see, Brian, that coaxed Brian out of the back room, see?
Yeah, the water fountains inside the fence, she's taking full credit for that because I brought it to your attention, but that's what separates our dog park from all the other dog parks in the area. Somebody had the good sense to put the water fountains inside where the dogs can get to them.
Right, when they need it. Yeah.
When they need it. So that was terrific. It looks very nice. All right. Well, with that.
I have a purely selfish
feeling that's coming towards me. What bike trail and path are we talking the Pooter Trail? Well, this is Matt's favorite topic, so I'll actually turn it over to him. So not me.
And we can take this offline if you'd like to finish the meeting, and then I can, or if you want it on the record, I can tell you on the record. It's either way is fine with me.
I've been trying to get it on the record for 9 years. I think it would be, to use your serendipitous, that was a good one, that we entertain a motion to adjourn, and then you can tell us all.
So moved.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned now. Answered the question for all of us.